Dial 650 presents It's Your Money, an up-close and personal look at your finances. Here's your host, Fred Snyder.
Up in the morning and out to school. The teacher is teaching the
Okay, we are back, and we are indeed teaching the golden rule. It's called pay yourself first. We're here to talk about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. And how to keep it is the key phrase there, because we don't do a very good job of that. We all know that. We've given the statistics out 10,000 times. 100 people started equal today at the age of 25. By the time they end up at 65, 1 is wealthy, 4 are well-to-do, 5 are still working, 36 are dead, and the remaining 54 might just as well be dead because they are dead broke, dependent on family and state. Wow. I think the main reason why people fail financially, and I've analyzed it every which way you can think of, for years and years and years. But if there's one fundamental reason why people fail financially, I think it's because they don't know how to manage their debt. They spend more than they earn, they run out of debt, they don't know how to manage it, and it takes control. They either don't have any cash flow, they're broke on payday, their interest expense is way out of line, it's not tax deductible, they don't know what to do, so they don't do anything, and it just gets worse. To talk about that and much, much more, joining me today is BlairMantin with Sands & Company. I think that's correct, right?
Sands & Associates.
Sands & Associates, okay.
That's right.
And Sands & Associates work with debt.
That's right.
You're trustees in bankruptcy, correct?
Yeah, so we're licensed by the federal government to help individuals when they got too much debt. So 2 of the main remedies we offer, I know we'll go into these in good depth today, Fred, is personal bankruptcy, where you just got way too much debt, you need to start again, and a consumer proposal, which is you got too much debt, but you can pay it off, just not everything. You can pay off a portion of it, you can get your feet back under you. So that's essentially what we do, is those 2 remedies.
I want to make it clear that I'm not recommending on this show that anybody declare bankruptcy, okay? And we're not trying to teach anybody on this show how to waive their debts and get out of debt or anything. We're just portraying options.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Fred. And bankruptcy is absolutely the last resort. There's nobody that walks through my door as, they had a bad day and they're a little worried about their net worth. They come to me after they've exhausted just about everything else. And I think success for me this morning, Fred, is if we can just give people the information, because your listeners, and I hope I never have to see them professionally, but everybody knows somebody. And it's up to 10% of the population at some point is probably going to have to go bankrupt or do a consumer proposal. So even if it's not for you, a little bit of knowledge is very helpful for the people in your life.
Now, we're talking some technical terms here. I think everybody gets some general idea what bankruptcy is. You brought up the term consumer proposal. Mm-hmm. Let's explore those 2 terms. What is bankruptcy?
Well, so bankruptcy is a legal remedy. It's available to anybody in Canada who owes more than $1,000, so it's not a huge borrow.
You mean I'd qualify?
I think everybody would, yeah. Just from basically living each month. You owe more than $1,000, and you're not able to pay that money as it becomes due. Now, realistically, I don't see many people that owe less than $10,000, but, right off the bat, it's a legal remedy. It's available to anybody who needs the protection. So nobody gets rejected from bankruptcy. You don't need to get permission. You don't go to court and ask permission, can I please be declared bankrupt? You sit down with a trustee, you explain every option that's available to you, and in the event that there's no way for you to get out of this under your own volition, no way for you to pay it off in full, and a proposal won't work to pay off part of it, well, then you sit down with a trustee, you'll work out all of your assets, your liabilities, and your monthly budget, and the trustee essentially helps you through the process of going through a bankruptcy.
So what bankruptcy does is kind of give us another start.
Yeah.
A fresh start.
It's a fresh start. It's a new lease on life. It's a chance to get back to zero. For many people, it's a chance to click, stop on this life that's been, essentially running them ragged for the past number of years. They've been getting calls 10 times a day and, unable to feed their families. It's a chance to click stop on all that and start again fresh without being burdened by debt.
What causes people to go bankrupt, Blair?
There's a number of causes. The biggest thing is it's an unforeseen life event. So number one things for us.
Something unexpected.
Divorce,
Okay.
Yeah. So people say, often, well, if you go bankrupt, you get divorced. It's so stressful, the process. It's actually the reverse. It's folks that get divorced, suddenly they have to reestablish themselves. They got some splitting of family debt, and quite often there was some, mutual misleading, will I say, of, when couples are breaking down, they're not always telling each other about all of the finances. So quite often when they split up, suddenly they have to face the reality.
Gosh, Blair, we're getting calls already. We
I
got
love that.
Ranjiv from Richmond. Ranjiv, welcome to the program.
Hi, Fred. It's Rajiv Singha here.
Oh, hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain. Wouldn't do any good anyway, would it?
Well, you know
Would it
what?
cause the market to do better if I complained?
Well, you know what? In that case, they'd be going through the roof.
What can we do for you?
Well, along the same vein, you're talking about bankruptcy and life event that changes one's financial outlook. I'm wondering, what about folks who have encountered what I've encountered, which is being downsized from an organization. Now you're looking for work, and you need to make sure that your finances are still good and healthy while you're doing that. Do you have any advice for these type of individuals?
So we get it straight. You had a job, but your job was downsized.
That's correct.
And you suddenly found yourself unemployed.
That's right.
That's an unexpected life event.
Yeah. So what does one do? Like in my case, I think I'm okay because I've engaged yourself actually to look after some of my financial stuff.
Well, you've been a client of mine for close to 30 years, I think.
Yeah, and it's been really quite rewarding and very satisfied customer. But in terms of my coming to this event, what should one person do to keep ourselves on a fairly decent?
You're one step ahead of me because that's the question I was going to ask Blair.
Right.
So Blair, how would you tell this guy to do? Come and see you? Come and see me? What?
Well, I think there's never a bad point to get extra advice. The more information you got, the better you'll be able to react to the situation. So I don't know a whole lot of the facts here. If there's a significant net worth that you're trying to preserve and so on and so forth. But a couple general things. I think you're in one of the toughest situations is that you're in a tough spot where you're in a transition period, but you don't know how long that transition period is going to last.
He's got a financial problem. It's called lack of a job.
Right. And you don't know how long it's going to last,
yeah.
Right? So that makes it difficult. If you knew you're going to be, laid off for 2 or 3 months and there's a callback, well, then you can sit down and do, a very detailed budget. The thing that I would tend to recommend to folks is two things. Is first off, sit down, look at all of your expenditures and put them into, absolutely must pay each month, the non-discretionary expenses, and put them into the discretionaries, the nice to have, and, instead of eating out, we can eat in if we really need to save money. What I find sometimes is people think their budget is completely insurmountable when they look at one broad number and that I need to pay everything. But if they actually figured out, well, if I don't pay my rent, I'm going to be kicked out in the space of a couple months. I better pay that. If I don't get my groceries, I'm not going to be able to feed the family. I better pay that. But there are some of the more superfluous things that can be cut when you sit down and segment.
Yeah, don't buy a new
budget.
car.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? Yeah, don't buy anything depreciating these days. So one is to sit down and segment your budget. The other is just to really consider when to speak with your creditors, and usually earlier is better. You'd be amazed how flexible your creditors, these are the people that you owe money to, amazed how flexible, how nice to talk to they will be if you're speaking to them when you're not delinquent. If you've made every payment, for the last 20 years, and you're going through a very tough time for a few months, odds are they're going to be able to help you out, either just allow you to pay interest only or allow for some reduced payments. They'll generally be much more likely to negotiate to work out arrangements with you if you're in good standing versus letting you go 90 days delinquent when they've basically sicked the collection agents on you. Very tough to make a deal at that point. You'd probably
I used
need
to be
someone
one of those
professional.
years ago.
You did?
Yeah.
Tell me
I
about
worked
that.
for a finance company.
Yeah. Did you find it enjoyable?
No.
I thought so.
I once had dishwater thrown on me right through a screen door.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't. Collection agents have a tough job.
I was in Cornwall, Ontario when Cordell's had just closed down.
Right.
30% unemployment.
Oh my God. And interest rates at that time?
I
probably don't even want to know.
They were neutral.
Okay.
They weren't out of line.
Yeah.
Really. That was a long time ago. Like early 60s. That shows you how old I am. Dating myself. Anyway, what would you recommend that Rajiv do at this point? Just look for a job? What?
Well, obviously, He doesn't need that advice from you. I'm sure he's looking long and hard for a job. I think that the two ideas that I've had of sit down, split the budget into what you have to spend and what maybe could be cut. And Rajiv, if you haven't spoken to your creditors yet, I would say sit down and really categorize the debts. What's the biggest debt? What's the highest interest rate? I tend to work from what's the largest amount first, because you got a small debt with a big interest rate. It can feel like a win, but really you've still got the big problem. So if you've got one big line of credit or one big relationship with the bank, I'd be going in for an in-person meeting with them, explaining the situation, explaining the transition that you're going through, and seeing if they will work with you to reduce some payments, waive some interest, or so on and so forth.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
So what advice would you give our listeners, Rajiv?
Start saving early. As soon as you get your first job, start saving. Start seeking the advice of an accredited financial advisor, and understand the value of money. After all, it truly is something that's earned by one's sweat and blood, really. And if you handle it carefully and well, it will handle you later on.
And you used to be a banker, didn't you?
I used to work at Royal Bank. Yeah, I was on the technology side, and then I worked there for about 17 years, and then I worked at TELUS doing the same type of technology work, IT and communications, and
you ought to be able to get a job, I think, with your skill. Shouldn't be that hard.
I hope to find something soon. It would be great.
So anyway, so you're talking to me on the line right now. So listen, sell yourself to our listeners. Maybe there's somebody out there that is looking for somebody just like you right now.
Well, if
here's
they
a chance
are,
to put your commercial out there.
Sure thing. If they are, they'll find an excellent management professional on their side who can understand complex issues quite well, who can interact with both the internal team as well as external clients. I've done just about everything.
You got computer skills too?
I do have technical skills, but when you become managerial, you don't really delve into that. You basically guide others that do have.
So you're a good supervisor.
Skills. That's correct. So you'll find a really good, dedicated person in myself.
And in all the time I've known you, I don't think you've ever been unemployed, so you have good job stability.
That's true, yeah.
Okay, so and how old are you?
I'm 53 now.
Okay. Are you married with a family?
No, single.
Okay. So single guy, 53, looking for a job. So ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, if you're looking for a good employee, Rajiv might be a very good guy to talk to. Give us a call. Speak to Frida. We'll make sure that he gets the number.
Thank you so much, Fred.
You take care and have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Okay, so if you just tuned in, I'm certified financial planner, Fred Snyder, also registered financial planner. We're talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. And the best way to keep it is to manage your debt load better than what you've been doing, okay? Anyway, I'm talking with Blair Mantin. He's with Sands and Associates. And he specializes in debt management.
That's right.
That's a good term, isn't it?
Yep.
And we talked about bankruptcy to a certain extent, and we'll get back to that. But what's the other arrangement that you referred to?
Yeah, so the other option is what's called a consumer proposal. And Fred, when I started in this business, about 10 years ago, nobody knew what a consumer proposal was. And I'm talking about trustees.
I'm not even sure that I do.
Well, now individuals don't know, but we're going to talk about that this morning. But it's some months we're filing more consumer proposals than personal bankruptcies. So it's an option that's really taken off in popularity. What it is it's meant to be a compromise. So if you look at a personal bankruptcy, in most cases the creditors are going to get almost nothing back. So they've maybe owed $50,000.
They get nothing back, and your credit is ruined for what, 7 years
Yep.
or something?
You have to file for bankruptcy. You're going to be in bankruptcy for a period of time. You're going to have to rebuild your credit, and the creditors aren't going to get very much, if anything, back. Okay. On the other side, the creditors want their money back in full, but they have to realize if the person's considering bankruptcy, they're not going to be able to collect in full. Okay, so the way a proposal works is it's meant to be the compromise in that you can't afford to pay the full debt back, so why don't we offer some portion of the debt? Usually a good starting point is about
$50,000, can we settle for 20?
Yeah, that would be good. That's about 40 cents on the dollar. Oftentimes we can go as low as 20 or 25 cents on the dollar.
Okay.
The way the proposal works is, say it was the $50,000 that was settled for 20. you would have up to 5 years to pay off that $20,000, and you pay zero interest.
How does that affect your credit?
It does affect your credit. So everything is set by law. All the interest is frozen. Anytime you don't pay your debts back in full, your credit is going to take a hit. The way a consumer proposal reports is it's less severe than a bankruptcy. It's the same as if you went and worked with a credit counselor and you actually paid everything back in full, but they saved you the interest. In this remedy, you're paying just the portion back, so big discount, and you're paying no interest. The same credit rating impact as if you had worked with a credit counselor to pay everything back. So that's an important point. It's not as punitive to your credit as you might think.
So when we talk about credit rating, let's just talk a bit about that. We got the bankruptcy, the proposal, and we've just brought up the term your credit rating. A lot of people listening to the show probably don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I'd say most people.
You have a credit score, right?
Yeah.
And where is that score? Who keeps it?
Yeah, so the credit rating, it's such an interesting point, Fred, because everybody knows and thinks that they want to have a perfect credit rating, but they don't understand how it's calculated, and oftentimes they don't know why they want perfect credit. It's just we've been drilled our whole lives, you better have a great credit rating.
It's an ego thing.
I think there's a piece of that, yeah. There's a piece of saying I've got the 800 Beacon score or the 750 or whatever.
Beacon score, what's that mean?
Well, so let's go through all of this. So there's your credit rating, and then there's your credit score. Okay, so if you pull your...
What's the difference between the two?
Right, so if you pull your credit report, you're going to see a credit rating for every single debt that you have. So every debt that you have, you know, your credit cards, your mortgage, all that, they're going to report from R1, and R1 is you're the perfect consumer, you pay everything on time, to R9, which is the debt's been written off in a bankruptcy. So every debt's going to have a score from R1 to R9 or a rating. Now, when people say credit score, they're talking about a number, and usually it's up to 800 is great, and down to 300, no one's going to look at you for credit. That's at a specific point in time.
And that's called your Beacon score.
Yeah, your Beacon score, your FICO score. There's
FICO in the States, right?
Yeah, what it is, it's a proprietary algorithm, so no one really knows exactly how it's calculated, and it's different each time for each bank. They can do their own little algorithm. It takes in things like how much credit are you utilizing, are you paying things on time, and so on and so forth. So you can't really reverse engineer your credit score, but you can check it. You can know intuitively if you're missing payments, it's going to go down. If you're not missing payments, it's going to go up. There's entire books written on how you improve your credit rating, but a lot of it comes down to just common sense.
Are those books valid? They talk about how to repair your credit rating. Does
Well,
that work?
There's some of them. The thing that I would say is you never have to pay anybody a dime to fix your credit. All these folks are going to tell you stuff that you can easily do yourself.
And they're going to send you a bill.
And they're going to send you a bill. Now, the best guys will be completely transparent with you and say, yeah, you can do this yourself. What you're paying me for is that I can do it faster and quicker and easier than you. Okay, so if you want to pay a fee to save your time, that's fine. But if someone says they can rebuild your credit from 0 to perfect, you know, in a short amount of time for a fee, I would run the other way. There's no way to do that.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, no free lunch.
Okay, so you're out there, you're listening to the show. We have Marianne from Langley on the line. Marianne, welcome to the program.
Hi, this is a question for Blair.
Yeah, hi, Marianne.
Hi, this is a question for Blair.
We got you. What's the question?
Okay, yeah. I always thought it cost $2,000 to claim bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's the question?
Yes.
Okay, so the cost of what it costs to claim bankruptcy, everything's set by the government, and it depends on your household income, depends on whether you've been bankrupt before, and it depends on how many people are in the household. So if somebody is a single person and they're considered low income, which means every month they bring their income home, it's less than roughly $2,000, they're considered low income, they've never been bankrupt before, they're in bankruptcy for 9 months, and what they have to pay is just under $2,000 over that time. It's $200 a month for 9 months. If they've been bankrupt once before, it's a little bit more. It's about $2,050.
Yeah.
So that's the minimum it would cost. But it sounds like there's a second question there, Marianne?
Yeah. My understanding is if you claim bankruptcy, that doesn't include child support, alimony, or student loans, does it?
You're right on 2 of those 3 accounts. So what I like about the bankruptcy laws is there's a lot of common sense to it, and I don't think I would be very satisfied with my job if I was helping people not pay the obligations they should pay, which are things like child support, which are things like alimony. If a court awards fines against you for bodily harm or sexual assault, all those things you can't go bankrupt and get away from. So I think there's a lot of logic there. With student loans, I don't agree with the logic, but it's not a hard and fast absolute rule for your life. It's for 7 years since you were last a student. if you declare bankruptcy or make a consumer proposal, you're still going to have to pay that debt when it's all said and done. Okay, so it's not the rest of your life like it is in the States. If you bring up a $100,000 debt to become a doctor and never make it, that follows you forever. In Canada, if you've tried to make income, if it's been 7 years since you were a student, it's exactly the same as every other debt.
But that doesn't include alimony or child support, right?
That's absolutely right. There's no way to discharge those through a bankruptcy or a proposal.
Because I know a few guys that try, but that doesn't work.
No, it definitely doesn't work, and it shouldn't work.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Marianne?
Yes, it does. And it's like you said, depending on how much you owe, it still costs $2,000 to claim bankruptcy, though, right?
Well, here's the one thing that it doesn't depend on. It absolutely doesn't depend on how much you owe. So you could owe $1,000, $10,000, or $1 million. What you're going to pay in bankruptcy depends on how much money you make, what's your ability to pay, and do you have any assets that might have to be sold. Most people don't have any assets, so it just comes down to their income. They're either low income, roughly $2,000, or if they're not low income, they pay based on how much they do earn each month.
Yeah. My understanding is if you claim bankruptcy once, it's pretty much of a chance it's going to happen to you a second time in life, because I know a guy that did.
So again, there's an element of truth there. There are people that go bankrupt a second time. I've seen a couple who've been a third time. Usually that's over the last 20 or 30 years. So hopefully it's for very unrelated things. The recidivism rate is around 15%. So 85% of people who go bankrupt, I'll never see them again. They've, something bad happened to them. They dealt with it. They moved on with their life. They got great financial habits. I love to hear from them when things are prosperous, but we won't do business again. About 15% of people, for whatever reason, unfortunately, they will use the system again.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your information.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Appreciate the call. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Okay, Marianne's line is now open. You're out there, you're listening to the show. You just tuned in. I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, registered financial planner representing Scotia Wealth Management. I used Scotia McLeod earlier. We've changed the name because it's more suitable for what we do. We help you manage wealth. And if you manage wealth well, you'll never have to go bankrupt.
That's right.
But if you don't do well, you might have to, and then you're going to need Blair.
Start again.
And that's what we're talking about, okay? And again, we're not recommending that anybody declare bankruptcy in any way, shape, or form, but we're giving you information so that you can decide when and if and all the rest of those things. So if you have any questions for us, get on the line and give us a call. Do you have anything that, a book or anything that you can give away for callers that call?
I'm happy you asked, Fred. I co-authored a book last year. It's called When Life Bites You in the Wallet. So it's aimed at, generally a little bit of an older demographic looking towards retirement. What are all the pitfalls, all the things you need to be aware of?
When life bites you in the wallet.
When life bites you in the wallet. I'd be happy to give away some copies this morning to our callers.
Okay, so you call the show, we'll get that book for you.
That's right.
And how will that book help people?
Well, I think what it does is it really takes away a lot of the veneer that you might see, trying to say, well, your relationship with your bank is the be-all and end-all, and the bank is your advisor. It really says, it's a business relationship between you and your bank, and you need to be the CEO of yourself. So really look long and hard at your credit rating. Why is it important to you? What's it doing for you? And we do a case study on where we show one scenario where the person who's got the $1 million house paid off, who clears their credit cards each month, they're financially secure, but they've got a worse credit rating than the person who has no assets. But they carry a balance every month in their credit cards, and they don't pay it off, but they make the minimums. They would have a better credit rating than the person who's got all the net worth and doesn't use credit.
Wow. Life
Perverse,
isn't
right?
fair, is it?
Life isn't fair.
It's not fair. So if you want to get your own credit rating, how would you get it?
Well, so this is good because most people would think you'd have to go online and pay a little bit of money to do that, and that's definitely the easy and quick way. Is you go to either Equifax or TransUnion. Those are the two in Canada. You go to their website and they'll give it to you for $20 or $30. The better way is if you go to my website. It's sands-trustee.com. Everybody has the right to get their credit report at any point.
Give that out again.
Yep. So SANDS, SANDS -trustee, TRUSTEE.com. If you go to my website and you click on downloads, there's a request form for you to get your credit report for free. So you have to mail it off, you send a copy of your ID, and then within a couple weeks, they'll send you back your credit report.
So there's no hidden costs at all. That's absolutely free.
It's your right.
And you provide that.
Yeah, it's your right. I recommend you do it, at least once a year, if not a little bit more. What you'll find too, and I don't say this lightly, I've never seen a credit report that's perfectly accurate. I pulled mine recently, and they had my first and middle name reversed. I don't know how that happened. I've been using credit for quite some time, but definitely you'll find some weird things on there that it's in your best interest to correct.
It's a good idea for people to constantly check their credit rating or their credit number, whatever you want to call it, through any of the reporting agencies or all of them. Experian's another one, right? Because of identity theft.
That's right.
So how does identity theft, or how could that affect your credit rating? Need I even ask?
Yeah, well, it could be terrible. It could be catastrophic, right? The big thing is, are you going to be held culpable for it or not? If you lost your wallet and you had your PIN number written down on a sheet of paper in the wallet, you're not going to have a good time trying to get the bank to say that you're not culpable in some of that misuse. So you could find yourself with a debt that, legally you're obligated to pay, and practically you're not able to pay it. So it could send you through my door, for example. We could be looking at, okay, well, you're not going to pay it all back, but let's talk about a proposal. Let's try to offer a third back at least. If you've taken every possible step, you've maintained security of all of your personal information at every stage, well, then ideally the bank is not going to hold you, personally accountable.
So part of your financial plan should have to do with your credit rating and checking your credit rating in case of identity theft.
Yeah, absolutely. It's at no charge. It's going to take a little bit of time, and yeah, odds are it'll be a good way to keep yourself safe.
Even if your credit rating is perfect, you still may have a problem in this area.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand they can scan your wallet right now walking behind you.
I've heard of that. They're RFID scanners. Yep.
Okay. So very, very important issue. So once again, 604-280-0650, long distance, 1-877-280-0650. You can log on, www.CIL650.com. And for those who are shy or reluctant to talk on the air, Frida right now is down at the office at area code 604-737-3512, long distance, 1-800-661-1495. Talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. And I think that everybody needs a written financial plan. And one of the tabs in that financial plan is about debt management. And that's your specialty.
Right.
You're a specialist in debt management, correct?
That's absolutely right.
So when I talk about managing debt, what causes people to get into debt? I know it's pretty fundamental, but all of a sudden somebody gets up in the morning, they go to the mailbox, they get all these credit card bills, they look at them and they owe thousands of dollars on their credit card. The interest expense is way out of hand. And they say, how did this happen? And it happens in particular at Christmas time. Okay? So how can people be so dumb as to spend more than what they earn?
Yeah.
And expect not to get into trouble?
Well, I'd say it's almost a fair question, Fred, because I think there's an element of folks who have mismanaged their financial situation. I think in every situation I see there's some element of mismanagement. You could have turned the tap off a little bit sooner. You definitely could have bought one less Christmas present, perhaps. But for the most part, it's not Christmas that sends people through my door. That might be the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's pretty hard. It's not impossible, but it's pretty hard to make yourself into a bankruptcy situation with a single holiday season. For the most part, why do people get into debt? Well, we talked about it's often divorce, or Raj called in and it was job loss is what he's facing now. That's number two. Medical issues are a big one that I see, and we all think, well, we all know we have socialized medicine here and we think that's the be all end all, but unfortunately it doesn't cover prescription drugs. It doesn't provide for your income to be continued. So if you have to take time off because you're facing a very serious medical event, very quickly that can send a family spiraling into financial difficulty if the main breadwinner's income is either significantly reduced or cut off. So that's a big thing. I think along the lines of mismanagement, Fred, unfortunately it's just the cost of living. We've seen, and since, oh God, my God, like since the early 1980s or so, wages haven't grown near the pace of inflation or near the cost of living. So especially in Vancouver, for example, it's very difficult as a single person to live on anything close to the low income guideline of $2,000 per month. You can do it, but you're probably sharing a roommate, sharing an apartment with several roommates. You're not eating well. It's just a very expensive place to live. And what people generally do is that they make the choice in that I can either choose to live here, but I know I'm going to go into debt each month, or I'm just going to, not even worry about that. I just really want to live here, or I'm going to leave. I'm going to live somewhere with a lower cost of living and make a little bit more income. I find that especially young people in Vancouver, the lure of living in Vancouver is so attractive that they're willing to go into debt in the short term just to have the few years in Vancouver. I find folks, around their 30s or so, when they want to build a house, they want to, have a family and get the yard, they realize there's no hope at all in the greater Vancouver area, so they're leaving for places like Ontario. They were leaving for Alberta until recently, but, now that's a bit of a reverse influx now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk to Mavis. Mavis, welcome to the program. Hi, Mavis.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I was a bit late in tuning in. And could you repeat the website that I can get the credit card report from your website? Send.
Yeah, so it's www.sands, S-A-N-D-S.
Triple W.
Yep, so .sands, S-A-N-D-S.
D-S, and then?
Hyphen.
Yes.
Trustee.
How do you spell it? Trustee, T-R-U-S?
T-double-E.
T-R-U-S.
U-S. T-E-E.
T-E-E.
.com.
.com.
Yeah, so if you go on there and you click on downloads, there'll be a bunch of links to some useful things. If a collector's calling you morning, noon, and night, I've got a letter to make them stop that. But then there's also a credit history request form. It's the same form. You'll send it away to both credit bureaus. You'll attach a copy of your ID to it. And then in the space of a few weeks, they'll send you a very lengthy, hopefully accurate credit report that you can compare, make corrections to, and at least know where you sit.
And if anybody out there has trouble with that web page, I'll make sure that Frida has it all. You got to just call Frida.
Exactly.
Okay.
Really appreciate your call, Mavis. You take care.
And your name is Sand?
So my name is BlairMantin, and the company's name is Sands and Associates.
Oh, and you deal with bankruptcy?
We deal with bankruptcies and consumer proposals, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your call. You take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Let's talk to Carrie from Vancouver. Carrie, welcome to the program.
Hi. I have a question for Blair. I just wondered two things. Because I know this single mom, she's, 30. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, she's around 30 or so, and she owes at least $28,000, if not more. She's having trouble making her monthly payments, so she's going to some type of a debt consolidation place or something. I'm suggesting that she should go bankrupt. But you mentioned how much it cost to go bankrupt, around $2,000. How much has a consumer proposal cost her?
Well, so thank you for calling in, Carrie. And as you were talking about the situation, this sounds very eerily familiar to many situations I see where people might be getting help from unregulated offerings. And I think, it's very helpful, if nothing else, that your friend gets the facts and, maybe gets a second opinion here. In terms of what someone has to pay in a consumer proposal, it's all based on what they can afford to pay back. So if they're paying back a third of the debt, so on $28,000, let's say they're paying back $9,000, for example, there's nothing extra they're charged on top of it. So because I'm licensed by the federal government, because there's only 1,000 trustees in Canada and we're the only people that can use these legal remedies, any fees that we charge are all dictated by law, and they're all included in whatever payments consumers are required to pay. So if the government says you have to pay $200 a month when you go into bankruptcy, I don't charge $1 over that. I get paid out of that money. Right. If you're doing a consumer proposal for, say, $9,000 and you're going to pay $150 a month over 60 months, I get paid out of that, and there's nothing extra the person has to pay.
Right. So she doesn't want to go bankrupt.
Right.
So is there is one better than the other? Like, why wouldn't everybody just do a consumer proposal then? Why would they go bankrupt?
And you know what? When I started in this business, that was the first question I asked myself: is why aren't more people doing consumer proposals? The biggest answer, Carrie, is that the people just don't know about them. So odds are, if your friend is working with someone, whether it's a credit counselor or a consolidator, they haven't sat down and explained to her all of her options in detail in an unbiased way, because dollars to donuts, 6 ways to Sunday. If someone is in a credit counseling plan where they're paying everything back, the only way that's their best option for them is if they can afford to pay everything back. In almost every case, I've seen people on these plans and they're struggling to live each month because they think this is their only option other than bankruptcy, whereas a consumer proposal, same credit rating impact, but instead of paying back 100 cents on the dollar, they're paying back some portion of it, usually about a third.
So this agency she's gone to, this debt consultant, whatever, she's already signed something saying she'll pay $300 in January or something. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, don't do it. Your creditors won't see a cent of it.
Yeah, so I think she's very much at risk, and I don't know which agency she's going to be dealing with.
Maybe it's a good idea for her to give Blair a call for a second opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm just wondering if there's something on your website that will explain what a person should do.
Oh yeah, if you go on our website, if she were to click through to consumer proposals,
Okay.
there'll be a whole outline of it. There's also an infographic that compares consumer proposals versus credit counseling. Just one last point on this is I'm very proud that our firm has really led the charge in trying to get the laws changed in BC. So the Attorney General Suzanne Anton is announcing very shortly that there will be some regulation to better protect consumers from unregulated debts, debt settlement offers or debt consultants. But as of right now, there's not a whole lot of consumer protection. So it is buyer beware, but definitely if you're dealing with a trustee, you're dealing with the most regulated, most qualified person. So even if it's just a free second opinion, I think there'd be some value there.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad to hear that you offer something besides bankruptcy. And
Yes.
even though she signed something and agreed to this, maybe she could still come and see you.
Well, it's not a maybe. It's absolutely she could come and see me, and it's absolutely even if she signs something that seems like a legally binding contract. If someone does a proposal, it cancels everything. Proposal is based on federal law. It trumps anything else that someone else might have signed. And I don't know if this is the case, but if there's something like government debt or student loans,
She owes the bank a bunch of money because I think she did a debt consolidation a while ago.
right? Yeah, so that's definitely something we could help with. So yeah,
Okay.
I would encourage her to give me a call.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Carrie, really appreciate your call.
Okay, thank you.
Have a nice weekend. Take
You
care.
too.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you just tuned in, I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, and we have to go to the break, I believe. So we're going to go to the break, and when we come back, we're going to continue to talk to Blair Mantin about debt management. Don't go away.
Fred Snyder.
Do you have a GPS? I do. I have one in my boat. I have one in my car. I get in my car, I can turn the GPS on, put an address in, it'll tell me exactly how to get there. When I'm in my boat, I can say I want to go to Anvil Island, and my boat will take me right there every time. Wouldn't it be nice to have a financial plan that would do the same thing?
Fred Snyder.
When you sit down with a financial advisor such as myself, I have to determine the level of risk that you need to take and the level of risk that you're able to take and the level of risk that you want to take and the way to get the best return on your investments. That's what your financial plan is all about.
Fred Snyder.
I just really appreciate and honor what you do every week for people, is giving them financial knowledge. So I'm just really happy about that. Just keep on doing the awesome work, Fred.
Fred Snyder.
So three kinds of people: those who really don't have a plan, they're just kind of starting out; those who are on the way; and those who feel they're already there. The three types of people. And those who are already there, maybe you need to get a second opinion on that portfolio, that you have to make sure that it's the right one, or maybe you have to tweak the plan itself. That's what we're talking about. If you fall into any of those categories, time to make a phone call.
Call Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. This is CISL Vancouver. Smooth and easy. CIL 650. This is It's Your Money on CIL 650. Here once again is Fred Snyder.
Okay, we're back, and again we're talking about debt management. I could go through all the steps in the financial planning process. I'm going to spare you on that one. We're going to really focus on your calls, and we're really going to focus about the points, the talking points involved in debt management. I think, and I really do, I think that the major number one reason why people fail financially is they don't manage their debt. They get into debt. What's the first thing you do when you get your first job? Got to buy a car. So you get a car. You have a car loan. And then you say, well, when the car loan's paid off, then I'll invest. But guess what? You get the car loan paid off, you buy another car.
Time to upgrade.
Yeah. And another car, and another car. And you're spending your whole life paying for cars with debt. And you don't have any money to save. I've had people say to me, I know I should be putting away $300 a month, $400 a month, whatever. I know I should be doing that. But I can't do it just yet. I'm going to wait till the car's paid off. And you know the rest of the story. They never get down to saving money. Ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, you have to pay yourself first and budget to pay everybody else. The key secret, the key remedy, you used the word remedy is the solution. The solution to becoming overwhelmed with debt is a budget. And what percentage of the people that come to see you have a budget? Probably very few of them.
It's definitely very, very few. You know, it's the odd person, maybe once every couple weeks, that sits down and has really, you know, they'll come up with the Excel spreadsheet. They've worked everything out, and they know exactly, you know, the writing's on the wall that they're not going to be able to get out of this situation. For the most part, when I sit down with people, they might have a budget, but it's a budget that just provides, you know, it's essentially kicking the can down the road. So it provides them to make the minimum payments on their debts each month. But then when we flip over their credit card statements, and this is a great disclosure, it's on every credit card bill for the last, you know, 3-4 years. The government makes them do this. Is it says if you're only making the minimums, it's going to take you 50 years or 100 years or 150 years. So what I find is even if folks have a budget for debt, it's just a budget to pay the minimums. It's not a budget to get them out of debt.
So you have to talk to your financial advisor to say, how much do I really have to pay on this debt in order to get out of debt?
Exactly.
Or better still, don't carry balances on your credit cards.
Yeah.
Pay them off every month. Okay? And if you get overwhelmed, get a credit line and pay the credit cards off because the interest rate's lower.
Yeah, one of the first things you can do is if you're paying, you know, 19% interest and you got a good relationship with your bank, is see, well, they wrap it all together, save you a bit of interest. Now, the thing that you've got to do here, and I see this again and again, is once you've consolidated, you can't rack up the cards again. So
cut them up.
You know, put them in ice, put them in your freezer, cut them up, do what you need to do. But I've seen too many consolidations that, you know, eventually they owe double the amount because they consolidated once and then ran them up again.
Well, when I worked in the finance business, we used to say, we get a customer once, we got him for 15 years. That was a quote, really. Okay? Because you get them paid off, start all over again. Get another, you know, you got to learn from what you do. So your debt gets out of hand, gets out of control, probably because you don't have a budget. You don't have a spending plan. That's another word for budget. You know how much is coming in, you know how much is going out. That's cash flow. And all callers who call this show, I will provide you with a very simple computer program that I wrote that will help you do a budget. We'll just email it to you. So all you got to do is call me or call Frida. In this case, calling Frida is okay. All right? And again, I've said many times, if you're shy or reluctant to talk on the air, you can call Frida. You want to make an appointment to see myself, you want clarification, you want Blair's webpage, just call Frida. In the meantime, I'll talk to Sarah. Sarah, welcome to the program. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah. You're on the line.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I did a consumer proposal a year back, and I didn't pay a third. I paid 75%. Is that unusual?
I would say it's unusual. And thank you, Sarah, for calling in. Where I say that most consumer proposals are in the range of a third of the debt, that's in a situation where if somebody went bankrupt, their creditors are going to get zero back, or 5 or 10 cents on the dollar. So if someone comes into us and we look and we see if they went into bankruptcy, the debts are going to get paid back, by say 60 cents on the dollar. And the way that might happen is, let's say that they've got a car that they've just paid off and the car is worth $15,000, for example. If they file for bankruptcy, they're allowed a car worth $5,000. So either the car has to be sold or they have to pay $10,000 back in. Okay, so they've got to basically make the estate whole on the value of their assets. So if that was your case, Sarah, what it would mean is that if you filed for bankruptcy, the creditors were probably going to get back, I don't know the exact numbers, but something more than zero, something probably closer to half of the money back, which is why if it's a consumer proposal, it can't be a worse recovery than if you filed for bankruptcy. So whatever would be paid into a bankruptcy, it has to be at least a little bit better than that, which in your case, it sounds like it, you still got a discount on the debt. It sounds like you're paying back about 3/4 and there's zero interest on it. But is every case a third? Some are as low as 15 cents on the dollar. Some are as high as 100 cents on the dollar. It really depends on what would a bankruptcy recovery be. That's kind of our starting point.
Okay, and the last question is, on my credit report, I recently went to apply for a mortgage. I have good income now, no debt, and I have the down payment, but they wouldn't give it to me because of the proposal. But, I'm looking around to see for other options. But anyway,
and just on that.
The question is, there's something on my report from a credit union that they did sent me a legal filing. I guess that would be like small claims saying you owe us $1,200, and it was a legal document. And that's on my report even now, and I've paid it off 3 years ago. Is it also like a 7-year thing on my report?
So no, Sarah. So again, these are really great questions. So the way a consumer proposal reports is once you've paid it off.
Oh, hello.
Yep.
Yeah, this isn't consumer proposal. This is when I just went to the bank and saw this on my credit file, and I said, "Oh, I paid that 3 years ago, that bill," and they said, "Well, it's still on your report."
Oh, okay. So then maybe I'm not clear about your question. I was going to tell you the way a consumer proposal works is it would be 2 or 3 years after you finish it. That's where it comes off your credit. So if you're still seeing it on there, that could be a mistake. Now, speaking to mistakes on your credit, as I mentioned to Fred just a few minutes ago, almost every credit report that I've seen, there are some inaccuracies or something that's reporting not correctly. So on my website, again, if you go to sans-trustee, under downloads, there is a credit investigation form. So if you find something that's incorrect on your report, the bureaus have to correct it, but the way they have to correct it is you have to first open an investigation with them. So it's a multi-page form. You say, here's what's inaccurate, here's my proof of what's the true state, and then they have to correct the credit.
Right. Okay then.
Yeah, and just on the last point, I think again, Sarah, I wasn't sure if I was clear of whether you did a consumer proposal or not.
Yeah, I have done one.
Okay, so I was going to say after the proposal is finished, generally it's 2 to 3 years. You shouldn't have an issue getting a mortgage. It should be cleared from your credit, but even if it isn't, I deal with a bunch of local mortgage brokers. As long as you shop yourself around, you shouldn't have an issue. So I would say send me an email or get in touch with Fred, and we can try to connect you to a good mortgage broker that if you fit the right profile, down payment saved, good income, and it's been a couple of years, there shouldn't be an issue.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate your call, Sarah. You take care. Okay, let's talk to Maria from Vancouver. Maria, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, Maria.
I've been listening, and there's a lot to learn in what is being said, but I want to say something a little bit on the different side. I'd like to say that maybe banks shouldn't be so quick to be issuing out all these credit cards to people, and people have to take charge of their life. A credit card is not free money. Yes, you can spend $5,000-$6,000 on one card and then go out and get another credit card from another bank and continue the cycle when you might not have a job or you don't make enough money. The banks are actually helping cause the problem. Another thing, I believe that being bankrupt in this country that is such a rich country is kind of sad. So we got to fix the problem at the beginning instead of seeing people. I mean, I respect your job, and I'm glad you're doing your job, but I think in such a rich country like Canada, compared to other countries in the world, it is sad that so many young people even go bankrupt. I never thought of stuff like that. But I can remember even before I was married, a neighbor across the street, she had her boyfriend, she had a couple of kids, and she said to me one day, "Oh, you know what, Maria? We went bankrupt." And I thought, what the heck is that?
Badge of honor.
So, we don't have to take it so lightly. Being bankrupt is like missing a body part. You don't want to go there.
I like that.
Well, so... And obviously, Maria, I would take the other side a little bit. I think there are folks that, they have mismanaged their life and they declare bankruptcy, and to the outside, it might seem unfair. I would say that's a very, very small percentage of the people that I see. For the most part, it's folks that, life's dealt them a very bad hand or raw deal or whatnot. Nobody asks to be sick, nobody asks to be divorced or to have something very bad happen to them. It's also bankruptcy laws. They're a very key part of any really well-functioning economy because they really set, well, what's the ground rules if something goes wrong? So no entrepreneur would ever take a risk if you knew that the risk of failure was death. Okay, we want people to take risks, to put themselves out there, and you do want people to be able to start again. So that's why a well-functioning insolvency system makes sense. Should it be easy? Should it be painless? Absolutely not. But I don't think it's anywhere near losing an appendage at the end of the day. In many cases, people feel as though they've actually gotten their life back and they've started again. It's something they'll do once. They'll probably won't tell anyone about it, and ideally they won't be bragging about it because it's nothing to be proud of. But they'll do once, and then they'll never have to go through my door again for the rest of their life. I think, Maria, you made an excellent point about the responsibility of the banks and of the creditors. Most most people that I see, they're incredibly despondent. They're hunched over because they believe it's all their fault. It's all their responsibility. And let's not discount individuals' responsibilities. And yes, they could have managed themselves better. But for a number of years, we had an age of very easy credit. People were getting unsolicited credit card increases, balance transfer checks, upping their limit all the time. Essentially, it wasn't fair, if you ask me, and there's been some sanity that's come back to it.
And governments are doing the same thing.
Oh, they are, yeah, but you hope they're more sophisticated, right? It's not fair.
And you wonder.
Yeah, and you wonder. It's not fair that the bank knows everything and is very sophisticated, and the individual has to educate him or herself. So I'm more along the lines of it's a shared responsibility. We need sanity from all sides, and I do take your point that there is some abuse. The system is very much set up to catch that abuse. Does some, slide through? Perhaps. I hope not. But at the end of the day, I get a lot of satisfaction out of helping people start again, which is the whole point of the system.
Well, I want to say one more thing. I want to say that this is a perfect moment to say to everybody that is listening that they shouldn't miss on the opportunity to get a financial plan. And since Fred is doing so much and discussing so much information every week to encourage people to get the plan, today is a perfect day to think about that and get that plan going for next year.
Get your future going today.
Yes, I agree with you.
The best way to create the future.
You have to think of today if you want to have a better tomorrow.
That's
and
correct.
I know something about that, but I don't need to repeat myself every time I come on the radio. It's just when I listen in and I feel I have something to say, I say it. Right or wrong, I find out one way or the other, but it's not to criticize anybody, but sometimes financial institutions are too easy on issuing the plastic, and that should change. Somebody should be talking to the banks and saying, yes, it's fine, you've given out one card, but they should not be allowed to go to the other 12, 13 institutions and get one from there too. It's impossible to pay back. If you haven't got the money, what makes you think that having a card is going to give you money? It's going to give you more debt.
It's a psychological thing, basically. The best way to predict the future is to create it today.
And like you
say,
you need to save 10 cents of every dollar. Yeah. And everything you say is so true. And I hope you get a lot of calls through yourself and Frida. And I hope that there's less and less people declaring bankruptcy because, like I said, we shouldn't have to go there. We should be responsible adults.
Can't tell you how much I appreciate your call.
Anytime.
Enjoy the weekend. Take care.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, we have open lines right now. The number to call is 604-280-0650. Long distance, 877-280-0650. Frida's down at the office for those who are shy or reluctant to talk on the air. Area code 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1495. Now, you're probably driving your car right now and you couldn't get all those numbers down. I'll give you the main number to call, and it's the principal number to call, really, is Frida at 604-737-3512. 604-737-3512. Just tuned in. Certified financial planner Fred Snyder, also a registered financial planner, talking with Blair Mantin, who is with Sands and Associates, and he is an expert when it comes to debt management. So this is your chance to get your debt under control, to get your questions answered, to get yourself a written financial plan, to get the book. What is it, When Life Bites You in the Wallet?
That's correct.
Wow. So he's got a book that he's co-authored.
That's right.
And you get a copy of that book if you just call the show. We'll also give you a will kit. Okay, so you want to get your will done. You don't have a proper will. You're not sure how to proceed with that. We have a beautiful kit that we'll give you. We won't give you both, side of the book or the will kit. So if you have the will kit, call in. We'll make sure you get the book. So once again, number to call, area code 604-737-3512. That's Frida. Live on the air is 604-280-0650. 0650, that's the station's call letters. Okay? We got Ian from Vancouver on the line. Ian, welcome to the program.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, Fred. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks.
Got a raspy throat here today.
I was listening in on what the lady just commented about credit cards being dispensed by the banks. I believe I'm not a banker, and I don't stand on the side of the bank. It's just that I believe there's such a thing called credit approval checks, which I believe banks do a credit bureau check before any credit card is given. So it's not as simply as just issuing the plastic. So I'm sure, Fred, you are aware of that process as well.
I am.
Yeah. So I think it's a fallacy that banks just simply issue credit cards. I don't think.
Well, they're not going to send you a credit card if you got bad credit.
Sorry?
They're not going to send you a credit card if you got bad credit. No, they're going to check your credit first.
So you should have mentioned that to the lady just now.
Yeah, when you fill out the application that they send you, you give them permission to do a credit check.
Yeah, that's all that I wish.
And every time somebody does a credit check, that also affects your credit rating.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're shopping around for credit, you can be hurting your credit rating if you're talking to a lot of different institutions, right?
That's right, actually, Fred. So, the good best practice there is to get the report yourself, bring it with you, and say, hey, if you check my credit, well, here it is. I don't want another hit on my credit. It's only when you know you're doing the deal with them and they need to, do the actual verify everything, then get them to do it once rather than having, 5 or 6 hits on it. Ian, I think your point is good. I didn't mean to, if I did, give the impression that, banks are sending credit out willy-nilly to individuals through the mail. They're not doing that anymore. They were doing that for a period of time where we saw it extreme was in unsolicited balance increases. So you might have had a card, you got it as a student for $500 to $1,000, and lo and behold, over the space of a number of years, that became $5,000, $10,000, or $20,000 without the person ever asking for
50.
it. Even 50. And you didn't have to say yes to this. It was just on the account. So now there's been some tightening of that. You must consent to any new balance increases. But there was a period of time where there was some, insanity on both sides, definitely from the consumer, but also from the banks. But to your point, Ian, I think it has tightened up in the past couple of years.
Answer your question, Ian?
Yep.
Okay, Ian, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your call. You take care. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Let's talk to Judy from Vancouver. Judy, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Hi, Judy.
Hi. I'm phoning on behalf of a friend I visited last night, and this person is in debt over $30,000, but has some money in a tax-free savings account. And it's the medical, like the dental, the medical as the person's 77 or something and just doesn't have the income, and ended up putting these medical expenses on credit. And I'm wondering if there's something like for somebody like that they could speak to somebody to help the bank, it's the Royal Bank, reduce that problem.
And how much is the TFSA worth?
Well, that's a good question. I think I didn't ask. I can't guess.
Okay, the big question here, Judy, would be, is it worth more than the amount of the debt? Because if it's the case that someone's got a positive net worth, which means, they've got more assets than they have debts, there's not going to be a whole lot they'll be able to do. But if it's the case that TFSA is worth $5,000 and the debt is worth $30,000, well, then there's definitely options available to that individual to help eliminate the debt.
Yes.
I think a really important point here, Judy, as well is there's different protection for certain investments. If you find yourself in debt, the worst thing you could possibly do is to start liquidating your investments without understanding what's protected and what's not. And where this really hits the road is where I see individuals asking, well, what have you tried to do to deal with your debts? And they tell me, well, in the last year I've cashed in $40,000 or $50,000 of RRSPs.
That's protected.
But that's absolutely protected, Fred, and you know it, and I hope many advisors know it, but a lot of people don't. So with the TFSA, there's nothing that's protected.
But the RSP is.
But the RSP is 100% protected. The only thing that would potentially be at risk is if you've thrown a bunch of money in the last 12 months, which that's going to look a little bit questionable also if you got a bunch of debt and you're contributing massive amounts to your RRSPs. But if this is something you've saved your whole life, the worst thing you could do for yourself, for your future, would be to compromise your retirement retirement to pay your debts. Where I see people have done it, the odds are they still need to eventually do something with their debts, and they don't have their retirement at the end of the day. So I would encourage your friend to give us a call. The way that we work, it's a free confidential meeting. It's one-on-one. They can meet with myself or any of my other trustees.
House calls?
Unfortunately, no.
That's okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're quite busy. We've got 15 offices across the province, so odds are that we're in your community, relatively local. And the initial meeting, it's focused on just understand the situation. What can you do to move forward? I'm definitely here to help you, not to make you feel judged.
Yes, exactly, because stress at 77 isn't a good thing.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Well,
yeah, and it can be very stressful. I find, especially with folks in senior citizen or the retired generation, they take it so to heart when someone is calling and saying, "Hey, you've got this obligation, you're not able to meet it." I see people that bring their grocery bill down to $100 a month, if you can believe it, because they feel like they've got no option other than to honor every obligation, because that's how they were raised, that's how they've lived their life, and unfortunately, sometimes they don't know there's another option that would be better for them.
Right. Sometimes I think banks go to 0% to help people out.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they occasionally do. So I think a good thing would be to talk to your bank. I think another good thing is to get all the information about all of your legal options. Because one point that I make in the bank is in the book is that the bank is not your friend. The bank, essentially they've got their objectives, you've got your objectives, and they may align, and that's great when they do. But oftentimes they may not align, and it becomes your responsibility to essentially understand what do you need to know to make your best decision. Don't depend on the bank to do the best thing for you in every situation.
Yeah.
Judy, I can't tell you how much appreciate your call. We have to go to the break.
Thank you.
Just got the high sign from the control room, the controller. Okay. So, Judy, thanks for your call. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Take care. And Blair, in case anybody wants to get a hold of you, you give your number out right now, will you please?
Yep, so the number for the office is 604-684-3030. That'll connect you to our switchboard. We're unfortunately not open on Sundays, but if you do leave a voicemail, we'll respond to you right away. We're open Monday to Saturday. We're open a couple late evenings through the week as well, and it all starts with a free confidential meeting. Sit down with somebody to understand all your options.
And we're after the break, and we'll be back after these messages. Don't go away. Because the name of the game is to create cash flow.
Fred Snyder.
So just visualize yourself. If you want to go to Hawaii every year, you're lying on the beach, you can feel the hot sun beating down on your back. You get up, you take a walk, you can feel the hot sand crunch between your toes, you hear the waves lapping on the beach, the seagulls circling overhead. You got to be able to visualize all this. And this is not just for you, this is for anybody else that's out there listening to the show. You have to motivate yourself. And the way you motivate yourself is being able to visualize yourself enjoying your objectives, as I just did.
And that's why I'm calling you.
Okay?
Fred Snyder.
That's the key. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how you can afford to pursue and enjoy your hopes, your plans, your dreams, and your ambitions. That's what we're talking about.
Fred Snyder.
If you have a financial plan and you're somewhere in the middle and you're wondering what tweaks that you should make in that plan to make it what you really want it to be, time to make a phone call. Or if maybe you're just getting started out and you want to get a starter plan, maybe it's time to talk to somebody like myself and get yourself on the right track.
Call Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. Welcome back to It's Your Money on CIL 650. If you have a question for Fred, call 604-280-0650. Now back to Fred.
Okay, we are back, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there. And again, I remind you, this is a live show, still continues live. And we got the next hour. We're going to take your calls. We're going to talk about debt management. One of the things I want to talk about, I was talking to Blair during the break about the issue of interest being tax deductible. And I want to talk about that because I alluded earlier to the fact that everybody should have a budget. And I think you'd have to be insane to say that that's stupid because a budget is necessary. Imagine a corporation operating without a budget. Imagine a government operating without a budget. A budget is a spending plan. This is how I'm going to spend my money. And I think financial planning starts with a budget. Now, I'm not going to go through all the items that appear in a budget. You can go to Stats Canada. You can get sample budgets. You can go to any of the web pages for any of the banks, get sample budgets. You call Frida, I'll send you a little budget program that I written, a computer program for doing a budget on yourself. Okay? And that's a good idea. Call her about that. And you can reach her right now. Area code 604-737-3512. But one of the items inside your budget is called debt service. That's the cost of your debt, not the principal payment, but the interest expense on the debt. It's isolated from the principal payment. That could be part of your budget too. I'm going to pay this much interest and this much principal. If you have a line of credit, that's your option. You could have to pay the interest, but you don't have to pay the principal. You could zero that out if you wanted. So I want to talk about how one could improve cash flow by decreasing expenses. So let's suppose that you're paying $1,000 of interest expense. That may be the interest on your mortgage, maybe the interest on your car loan, your credit cards, whatever. $1,000, using that nice round figure. Now, if you're in the top tax bracket, you have to earn $2,000, pay $1,000 of tax to have $1,000 left to cover that mortgage. So when you take that expenditure and compare it to before tax income, it takes $2,000 or $24,000 a year of before tax income. Let that sink in for just a little bit. That's a lot of money. If you have a $100,000 income, that's a quarter of your income just to pay the interest on the mortgage. Now, if you could make that $1,000 tax deductible, what's it cost you? $500. You've decreased that expenditure by 2/3 if you're in the top tax bracket. So instead of having to earn $2,000 to carry that mortgage, you really only have to earn $500 because it's tax deductible. Wow. What would you do with the extra money if you had it? You could put it into your RRSP and make it tax deductible. You could use it to buy life insurance. You could use it to pay for your vacation. All kinds of things you could do with it. So if you could make your interest on your mortgage tax deductible, you'd have more principal to be able to repay, pay the mortgage down faster. This is cash flow management. That's what we're talking about. And people don't do this. I see it every day. People come in, they have big, big mortgages on their houses, and they're not tax deductible. They have great big balances on credit cards, and it's not tax deductible. And now, you may not be able to make it tax deductible in every case, but at least explore it. Does this make sense?
I think it makes a lot of sense. The big question, how do you do it?
Okay. Well, let's say, for example, that you have tax deductible business expenses. Maybe you're a sole proprietor. You're not incorporated. You borrow to pay your business expenses. If you do that, the interest on those borrowings is tax deductible. Use the cash you normally would have used to pay those business expenses to reduce the mortgage. That's not deductible.
Right.
If your business expenses are huge, you can do it in one great big step. If it's not so huge, you can do it in a series of smaller steps. Let's say that you have a $100,000 mortgage and you inherit $100,000. You take the $100,000 that you inherited and you pay off the mortgage. You put a new mortgage on the house for $100,000 and use the proceeds to invest. The interest is tax deductible. It's called the Smith maneuver. The process has been attacked numerous times by CRA under the general anti-avoidance rules, and in most cases the taxpayer won. There's one case they didn't. I think the case is called Lipton. And even the presiding judge said had they done it right, it would have worked, but they didn't do it right. And all I'm saying is don't run out and try to do it yourself, but seek expert advice. Get the book, The Smith Maneuver. I think that everybody would improve their overall financial situation based on the statement that I made earlier, that I think the reason people fail financially is they don't understand how to manage their debt. The best way to understand how to manage your debt is to get the book, The Smith Maneuver, and read it. Written by Fraser Smith. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I've definitely heard the Smith maneuver, and I understood in general principles. So you pay off the mortgage, you borrow something that is tax deductible. But Fred, I've never known anyone that's done it. So you've done this with
lots of
people.
Lots of people have done it, but just as many people don't. They're afraid to.
Yeah.
they think that there's something illegal about it or whatever.
It almost seems like it's a Canadian thing. We know in the U.S. people can
It's
tax
automatically
deduct, they can
deductible.
deduct their mortgages in the U.S. and we know
Yeah.
we're Canadians and we can't, so we
Yeah.
just kind of stop there.
That's correct. So you're out there, you're listening to the show, and you want clarification on this or anything else that we're talking about. You have a question, give us a phone call. We're giving away your book, and it's How to Stop Life from Biting You in the Wallet.
Pretty close. When Life Bites You in the
When
Wallet.
Life Bites You in the Wallet. I'll get it right, yeah.
Yeah. Next time I'll bring a copy. Yeah.
How many pages?
It's about 120.
Easy read?
Definitely. Yeah, it's 20 chapters. Each one's focused on a different life event, a different stage.
So you want to improve your knowledge. Like I talk about a financial plan, and the first section of a financial plan is dedicated to knowledge. So you have a divider in there that says, this is how I'm going to learn about how to handle my money. And then another line right after that, this is how I'm going to keep up to date. Because as we speak, things change. So knowledge is reading books. The Smith Maneuver, your book, When Life Bites You in the Wallet. Okay? And it's free. I think that everybody should get themselves a library. Just get yourself a bookshelf and dedicate that bookshelf only to money. Now, you think I'm sounding maybe a little mercenary or whatever, but look, there's nothing wrong with money. Some people say, I don't like money. Well, I've been poor and I've been rich, and I'd rather be rich. Okay. Money is not bad. It's the misuse of money that's bad. So the bottom line is, you need to become obsessed with the accumulation of money. And the way you do that is to have a spending plan. And the spending plan is a budget, another word for it. And the spending plan says that Fred Snyder, from now on, for the rest of my life, I'm only going to spend 90 cents out of every dollar that I earn. By autopilot, 10 cents is left over. That'll sit in my bank account and accumulate. And when my bank account gets too fat, too much money in my bank account, I'm going to find myself an advisor that I can entrust that money to who's going to invest it for me and make it grow. And that's kind of my big picture financial plan. And a financial plan has a section which is dedicated to assets. This is what I own. Liabilities, this is what I owe. That's kind of what we're talking about. Dedicated to income, this is what I make line by line. And this is what I spend line by line. Now, if I spend more than I earn, I increase liabilities because I got to borrow the difference. If I spend less than I earn, I increase assets. The assets go up. There's a relationship between those four areas. So my job as a financial advisor is to help you invest your money so that your assets grow, so that your liabilities decrease, so that the cost of managing your debt decreases, and that your income is greater, and it's the type of income you get is tax preferred. It's dividends and capital gains instead of interest income. And that's kind of what a financial plan does. And when I do this show, I always run the risk of getting too technical. I try not to, deliberately, because there's lots of technical stuff I can bring up, and I'll lose listeners fast. I have Tracy on the line, so I'll talk to Tracy. Tracy, welcome to the program.
Morning, Fred, and
morning,
good
Trace.
morning, Blair. How are you two doing?
Oh, we're just doing great.
Good. There were a couple of comments I wanted to make, and one was the discussion of credit cards. Back before I met Fred and became one of his clients, I had probably, I would say, close to 8 different credit cards, and they all came with those checks you could write. And I was a single mom, and I spent probably most of my time trying to balance credit cards by paying one credit card with a check from another credit card, and it went around and around. Well, I eventually got everything paid off, got rid of a whole bunch of credit cards, have 2 credit cards which give me benefits of things that I use, and that's a President's Choice MasterCard, so I now collect groceries about once every 4 months. I can buy $200 worth of groceries free, kind of thing. So, and that benefited me. And it was a tough go with kids' shoes and everything, but it got done. All the bills got paid off. And then I kind of met Fred and decided that I could put $200 a month away in a savings account. But instead of doing that directly, what I did was I went and I got a loan, and Fred knows what it is, and borrowed a large amount of money and put it in an investment account. And that $200 pays the interest. So that so instead of taking 20 years to accumulate that amount of money by $200 a month or whatever it would be, I start out with a large amount and it grows faster. And that amount that I would have paid is the interest, and the interest is deductible. So I kind of, it was a win-win situation with the investment. So. There are ways that people can create money, and sometimes if you know you have to pay it, you'll find ways to create the money. In other words, you won't go to Starbucks, or you quit smoking, or you don't use your car. You don't use your car every day. You use it once a week and do a circle and do the groceries and the dry cleaning and everything at one time. And it worked for me. And I ended up not having a car for a number of years, and so I could meet these. I'm now retired, so it's even more important now that I'm retired to have a budget and to have a plan in place. And Fred has helped me do that. And
you've been doing that for how long, Tracy, now?
Let's see, I think I met you in about 2003 or 4 and became a client by 2005, something like that. Mm-hmm. But going to your evening classes that you held at the time was such a benefit to get me to focus on what was really important in my life. And as Fred knows, I love to travel, and cruising was something that I wanted to do.
And she won't buy a house.
Education was unlimited.
Tracy, how many times have I told you to buy a house?
You've told me to buy a house. I lost count a long time ago. But I don't have the.
Tracy doesn't always listen to me.
No,
but she's traveling. That's her main priority. Yeah, and she does it.
And my rent is fine. I've got a wonderful landlady, so I don't. It's not that I'm in a bad situation or anything. I also know that my parents, when they had a house, but they had a house because they had 4 kids. My dad spent a lot of time maintaining the house, and I just decided that I didn't want to spend time mowing lawns every weekend and painting the house once a year.
But you see, Tracy, the point is simple. You're doing what you want to do.
Exactly.
And financial planning allows you the freedom to do what you want to do.
Right.
That's it in a nutshell.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily the be-all and end-all to own a house.
No.
Although I think it's a pretty good investment.
I think
but
it is.
you want to direct your funds, your available funds, to travel and enjoy life, and that's what you're doing, and you're doing a darn good job of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. And, I wanted to say also that Blair has opened up my eyes to other options other than just bankruptcy, because that's all I hear people talking about is maybe I should just declare bankruptcy. And I think that now I have some answers for them. Go see Sands trustees.
Thank you, Tracy. You're making my Sunday here, because I don't joke when I say it's my life's work to try to make people aware of a consumer proposal. Doing things like this with Fred are just great for me. And Tracy, I find it's actually inspirational to hear the story. You were in a very tough financial situation, and what really came through in your story to me was all about goals and the importance of goals. And you decided, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm moving money around. around, I want to have some security, I want to travel. You set some goals, and then you were able to meet them. So I think that's really great to hear somebody who's done that and achieved.
I didn't know. I mean, bankruptcy to me was just out of the question. I mean, I was like close to $50,000 in debt, and I was a single mom, and I was sitting there thinking, how am I going to pay this all back? And I just decided that.
But you got her done, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I got it done in something like 3.5 years, but I got rid of all lunches with girlfriends, coffee on the road, doing all these things. I was a bus driver, Blair, so I just got rid of everything. And then once I got rid of the debt, it was like, now I've got some money that I can invest. What's the best way? I'm 47 years old at the time. I needed to find a way to invest the money, and Fred came up with this deal where you get a lump sum of money and it's invested, and I pay what I could afford in the interest, and then the interest became tax deductible. And so I've now got a portfolio that's it's not, I've got money sitting there, put it that way, and I'm feeling a whole lot better. I don't feel scared. I don't spend my life feeling.
Well, that's important. We got to get rid of the fear.
Yeah, exactly.
Tracy, I have to move along. I got other callers.
Okay,
so you
thanks.
take care.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, I will. Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, let's talk to Vinny from Vancouver. Vinny, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Good morning, Vinny.
Hi. I listen to your program regularly, and this is my first time calling in. You never talk about a minimum amount you need before you can go to a financial planner.
Well, that's different. That's a different story for different financial advisors, and I'm basically saying to you, I will talk to anybody. It doesn't matter what the amount is.
Okay. All right. So I'll call your office and make an appointment.
You give the office a call. Just make an appointment. We'll go from there.
Because I think I went to somebody and I was told I had to have at least $500,000 before they'd even talk to me.
That's awful.
So
I mean, look at the people that have been locked out. I mean, not a lot of people have $500,000 to invest.
No, and then if you're like, I'm in my 60s, so is it too late?
It's never too late.
Never too late. Okay,
I have clients. Listen, I have clients. I have one client that's 92.
Okay.
Planning for retirement?
Excuse me. I got another client that's 103.
Okay.
There you go.
So
at one time, I had 3 clients that were over 100.
Yeah, it's just as a new client, I just thought, well, if you don't have the startup, there's no point trying to do anything.
I remember in 1964, the first year that I was in this business, I worked out of Ottawa, and I got a lead or a referral to a lady in Winchester, Ontario. I guess I can use her name right now because I'm sure she's long gone.
Okay.
But her name was I'll use her first name. Her first name was Desdemona.
Oh.
And she was 103.
Wow. Okay.
And she invested $5,000 for her son, who was 87.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's a true story. And she had all her wits about her.
Oh, okay.
She knew what she was doing.
I mean, I don't have any debts, but I mean, I do have a mortgage, but I own the house otherwise. So I just wondered if there was any point coming.
Be happy to talk to anybody.
Okay. All right. I'll call Frida.
Financial planning is for everybody. Investment planning might be something other than that, but financial planning, I could create a financial plan for a newborn baby.
Oh, okay.
Okay? That's the planning process. You may be doing it for the baby, but that's the planning process.
Okay.
The baby is going to go to university, is going to start working at age 24. That's planning. You lay it out on a piece of paper. I've said this many times, and I may be repeating it, but it's noteworthy, and it should be written down. So anybody out there, either memorize these points or write them down, because I think it's the secret to success. The first thing you do, the first step, is to crystallize your thinking. That means you develop crystal clear goals. You can see them. You don't just say, I want to be rich. You can't see that. You don't even know what it looks like. It has to be specific. Step number 2 is you develop written plans with deadlines. You put it in writing, a written plan with deadlines.
Okay.
Now, that would be a financial plan if you're talking about money. This third step is to kindle desire. In Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, he says that you have to have a burning desire. Kindle desire says almost the same thing. That came from Paul Meyer, the president of Success Motivation Institute, rather than Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. But it's the same thing.
Okay.
The next step is you develop confidence. How do you create confidence? If you keep saying to yourself, it's not going to work, what you're doing is programming your subconscious mind to fail. What you need to be saying is, it will work, and I'll make sure it works. Positive affirmations. So you plant positive thoughts in your subconscious mind. You develop confidence. You develop confidence by creating small sub-goals to reach the larger goal. And you never fail. Saving 10 cents a day, just about anybody that's listening to this show right now, I defy them to prove to me that they can't save 10 cents a day. Okay?
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
So think about that if you will. But I gotta get the fifth one out.
Yeah. Okay.
There's 5 steps. The last step is to have the iron-willed determination to follow your plan, regardless of circumstances, criticism, or what other people say, think, or do. That's the 5. Write them down. Follow it. It works.
Okay.
Vinny, I appreciate your call. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you very much. I
Bye
enjoy
for now.
your show.
Okay.
Bye.
Let's talk to John from Vancouver. John, welcome to the program.
Hey, guys.
Hi, John.
Just want to say what a great show, and I really appreciate the service. I know I speak for a lot of other people with the service provided, especially today, Blair, with yours. One question I have that hasn't really been touched on is consolidation loans with banks, and how does that play into this? And is there a conflict of interest on the bank's behalf regarding, should you be doing a consolidation versus going to bankruptcy or otherwise?
Well, I think when you use the term conflict of interest, I smirked a little bit, because a conflict of interest would be where the bank actually has 2 interests to manage, your interest and their interest. I don't think the bank shareholders at all would say that the bank wants them to manage to make you better off as opposed to the bank's better off. So I would say the bank accept that they are self-interested, unless you're in a fiduciary arrangement with them, you're got an advisor that has some relationship with you. I would expect, don't assume that the bank is conflicted. They're not conflicted. They're very much out for their objectives, and hopefully yours will dovetail. Consolidation loans make a huge amount of sense in situations where you can get them. Okay. The challenge is, most of the time, if someone tries for a consolidation loan, I mean, most of the time, most of the folks that I see, obviously, who it didn't work, if you don't have assets, you're not going to be able to get a consolidation loan. So there are some individuals where you don't have assets, but you've had a great relationship with the bank, for 10 or 20 years. In those situations, I would say, at least try. But if you haven't had a long-standing relationship with the bank, and you don't have, either a lot of equity in your house, or a vehicle with no loan, or some investments, and not typically RRSPs, because those can't be seized, so some non-registered investments or things like that, the bank is usually going to want to take security over assets if they're going to go and pay off all of your other debts. So what I would suggest is, speak to the bank, see what they will do, but then also look very deeply at what's a consolidation going to do for you, and is it going to solve the problem? Because if you're taking 19% interest to 12% interest, that's great, you're saving some money, but even at that 12% interest, what payment are you able to make, and how long is it going to take until you see the right side of zero? Because many times, if it's a consolidation loan over 5 years, the payments are going to be too high to eliminate the whole principal, so you're just going to pay interest for a while, and the consolidation loan is going to persist for quite some time, and then again, ideally you won't run up other debts and you'll get out of it, but I do see sometimes they tend to spiral down more once you consolidate. Does that help, John?
Yes, very much. One last thing was, let's say the bank then denies you the consolidation, and you go to a alternative such as the 2 you were talking about today. At that point in time, is the bank able then to write your debt off against their bottom line?
So when it actually gets written off, I'm not sure on the banks in terms of when it hits their financial statements. I know for certain as soon as you've signed either a consumer proposal or a personal bankruptcy, the bank has no further remedy against you. So they can't call you, harass you, take you to court, collect any payments from you. Now, in every consumer proposal, they're going to get some dividend. They're going to get some part of the debt back. So when they write off the balance of that, I'm not sure. In many bankruptcies, they end up with zero back, but in some bankruptcies, there's some recovery. Maybe the person had an inheritance or there were some assets to be sold. But in general terms, the banks are writing off a big proportion of that debt once a person files for a bankruptcy or a proposal.
So when they do the write-off, it basically becomes a liability for them to write against their own bottom line.
Yeah, it becomes an expense against their income. And if you really want to be schooled in the magnitude of things in this world, if you look at their loss provisions on consumer debts, and then you look at their their quarterly profits, they're pushing $2 billion. Most of the big banks, I think, the earnings quarter just released, it was $1.8 billion, I believe, for Scotiabank in the last quarter. Loan losses are just a small fraction of that. It barely makes the press releases. So it's a good thing in that the vast majority of people in Canada, they're paying their debts back. But the folks that do have the debts written off, it's not enough to really impact the banks in a huge way. They're still doing quite well.
When I worked for the finance company many years ago, this may have changed since, but they had a category called P&L. And these were accounts they'd written off. If you collect them, the money collected was considered to be pure profit. Okay, and they liked that. But if they'd have declared bankruptcy, you wouldn't have been able to collect those.
Right.
Just because the bank writes them off or the finance company writes them off doesn't mean the money isn't still owing.
Well, it's interesting, Fred, too, because that's exactly what they do these days with debts that banks can't collect. If someone hasn't done a bankruptcy or a proposal, what they're going to do is sell that debt off, sometimes multiple times, to collection agents. So if you've got somebody aggressively calling you over the phone, understand that person is probably being paid on commission, and their firm has bought the debt for pennies on the dollar. And if they're able to get 100-cent dollars back from you, they're going to get some commission on that. You only need a couple in a day to make a living. So the collection agent on the other side, they're very heavily variably compensated, so keep that in mind. They do want you to pay, and they'll say things to make you do so.
So the collection agency could buy that from the bank for maybe 75 cents or 60 cents or 50 cents on the dollar.
Oh, much lower than that. It's often single digits.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Good business.
Could be if you
could
collect,
be tempting.
Right? Yep.
I'm a good collector.
Yeah.
Well, Fred, Blair, public service, awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Take care. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, John's line is now wide open, and we got open lines, and we have break time. So we're going to go to the break, and when we come back, we're going to continue to take your calls. We're going to continue to talk about debt management. Don't go away.
Fred Snyder.
Statistically, if you take 100 people who start out equal today at the age of 25, by the time they end up at 65, 1 is wealthy, 4 are well-to-do, 5 are still working, 36 are dead, and the rest are dead broke, dependent on family and state. That's over half the people who start out equal at age 25 by the time they end up at 65 are dependent on family and state. And that's a sad state of statistics.
Fred Snyder.
You need a blueprint that says this is where you're at right now, and this is where you want to go, and this is the way to get there.
Fred Snyder.
So isn't it time to get that good, warm, fuzzy feeling because you know exactly where you're at? You know that your investments are going to work for you. You know that you have the right investments inside your financial plan. You're confident about the future because you've covered all the bases. You know exactly how much life insurance you need, and you have the right amount of insurance. You have a financial advisor, such as myself, or somebody that's equally competent that you can check with to determine whether you're on track or not. And whether you're on track or not, I'd like to use the analogy, do you have a GPS?
Fred's got your GPS. Talk to Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. This is CISL Vancouver. Smooth and easy.
CIL 650.
You're listening to It's Your Money on CIL 650. Once again, here is Fred Snyder.
Okay, we're back. And I remind you once again, ladies and gentlemen and listeners out there, this is a live show. just tuned in, I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, also a registered financial planner representing Scotia Wealth Management, teaching people what they need to know to make better financial decisions, teaching people what they need to know to get a written financial plan, which is a document, which is the bridge to your financial future from where you're at right now. So a financial plan says, this is where I stand, this is where I want to go, and this is how I'm going to get there, financially speaking. And people fail financially, I believe, because of lack of knowledge, a whole bunch of reasons. I have 13 of them that are well defined. But I still think the fundamental, main reason why people fail financially is they don't manage their debts well. They start out life, they start out working, and they're in debt almost right off the bat because they buy that first car. Isn't it true?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then they get the car paid off, and they buy a new one. I actually did the calculations on this one. My first car was a 48 Plymouth. Back in '54, it cost me $600. I drove it for 6 months. I needed a brand new car. I bought myself a brand new two-tone green 55 Plymouth. It cost me $2,800 difference. $81 a month, the IAC, Industrial Acceptance Corporation, back then. I took the time to calculate one time, what would have happened if I'd have continued to drive the 48 Chev and just not bought the Plymouth. I got all the other cars I bought, I kept. I just bought the Plymouth. Had I invested that money in Templeton Growth Fund, we started right about the same time, today I would have $3.5 million. So that's what the second car cost me.
Wow.
You see, too soon old, too late smart. Okay? Nobody taught me that. And they should have, in school. Every school should take the time to have a course in financial planning, in finances. So what do? I sit here doing this. How many people understand bankruptcy laws? What percentage of the population, Blair, would you say?
Oh my God, Fred, I was a business graduate and I understood almost nothing about it. So I was more sophisticated than most. So there's almost nobody I see that's got a really strong grasp on it. People usually have bits and pieces, but what's challenging is it's all, well-meaning friends, family, or other advisors who think they have the truth and end up giving people bad advice. So unless you're a trustee or someone working with a trustee, you probably don't have adequate knowledge.
Well,
to
we're
understand
using
the
a
whole
lot
thing.
of terms here that I'm sure people don't. Like what's a trustee?
Yeah, so a trustee is what I am. So I'm a trustee licensed by the federal government. So I'm the only person in Canada, and there's 1,000 people just like me who are empowered to help you with a personal bankruptcy or help you with a consumer proposal. So most people think, I need to go to a bankruptcy lawyer. That's the U.S. In Canada, lawyers are prohibited from doing bankruptcies. So a trustee is the most qualified person you could ever see if you're in over your head with debts. Because to be a trustee, you got to study about 5 years after university. You got to sit an oral exam with the government. It's a license they can take away if you don't, act appropriately. So a trustee is empowered to help you get the protection that you need from your debts and use Canadian law to restructure.
Okay, let's, in our remaining 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so, let's summarize. So what have we talked about here today? What should people, if they're out there with a notepad writing things down, what should they be doing?
Well, I think the number one thing that we talked about today is we tried to take a little bit of the mystery out of what can you do if you find yourself in over your head with debt. Because
what does that mean, though? Let's define that. What does over your head and debt mean?
Well, it's
how do you measure that?
It's different for everybody. I think a good litmus test is take your monthly income, and if you owe more than 5 times that amount, have a conversation with a professional. So let's say you're starting off in your career and you're earning about $2,000 a month. If your debt, I'm talking your unsecured credit card debt, is over $10,000, I think you need to have a chat with somebody, and you may just consider on with the plan that you've got, which is you're going to get big raises and you got some tax refunds coming, whatever, but at least learn the facts. If you're earning $4,000 or $5,000 a month, well then obviously if you owe $10,000, you're making $5,000 a month. That might not be that far out of whack.
What about debt service ratio? Would that be a way to measure?
Yeah, it definitely would. What I find is when I look at ratios, unfortunately, in the Lower Mainland, the one that goes right out the window is the accommodations ratio. It should be, under 30% is being paid for rent. I find with some people it's well over 50%. Yeah, it's insane. And then when you try to fit in, okay, well, you got food, roof over your head, then you need to put food on the table, and so on and so forth. It's oftentimes there's minimal amounts that are left for debt service.
There's lots of people in Vancouver that wouldn't qualify. Right there, the debt service ratio would be way out of whack.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's what is it? There's gross and total debt service ratio. There's two terms. Do you know the difference in those two?
I don't know them in depth. They're more used by lenders. I generally just see them as here's what I got to pay on my debts, and it's too much of a percent
it's roughly
for them
a ratio
to settle.
of 35 to 40.
Right.
Most of the time. So it takes into account your debt payments. You may not even owe any money, but they assume that you're maxed out on that debt when they calculate the ratio. The worksheet that I talked about, that I distribute to people, the budget worksheet, also creates a worksheet that calculates debt service ratio automatically.
Right.
So you want to get that, all you got to do is make a phone call. You can call Frida. You can reach Frida right now, area code 604-737-3512, and just tell her you want that. It's a little computer program that I wrote for calculating only debt service ratio. I got one that does a whole financial plan, but I'm not offering that. This is part of the plan, because I think you got to start. You got to start with the budget, and then you got to say, okay, how do I stack up? Well, the last part of that program gives you a page, which essentially says your debt service ratio is out of whack, or it's in line.
And that's exactly what we do in our first meeting, Fred, is we look at, what are you paying on these debts and what are you making per month? What are your family responsibilities? And is there a mismatch? And for many people we see, it's, there's not a mismatch. They're okay. They need some budgeting, coaching. We're able to connect them to, community resources or whatnot. But for many folks, it's, 50% of their income is going to rent and then another 20 is going to food. By the time they're trying to clear a $10,000, $20,000 or $30,000 credit card debt, all they're doing is paying the minimums, and their credit rating will be happy for them to pay the minimums forever. The banks will be fine for them to pay the minimums forever,
because they're going to make a lot of money.
But the individual is never going to build wealth, and that's the real sad thing. Is if all you're doing is treading water, paying the minimums, you are selling out your own retirement, your own building of wealth, to essentially give the banks a 20% return on your debt. So not to say don't do it, but be aware of what you are doing, be aware of all of your options, and if you still want to make an informed choice, make it with the right facts.
And financial planning really is all about wealth creation.
That's why we're here.
Okay. And preservation. And estate planning is the transfer process. So at the end of the day, I have my financial plan. It created a great big bundle of wealth. What happens when I die? I got to pass that wealth on to my beneficiaries, my heirs. And often there's a fight. There's a lot of friction. And the government wants a great big piece of that money for the tax man. So you got to, the plan's the thing. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So you got to have yourself a proper financial plan. And Tracy and Maria, when they called, they said, look, why don't people call to get a financial plan? Stu Ferguson, the program director on this station, we've talked about it many, many times. He said, I don't understand why they aren't lined up at the door to get a complimentary written financial plan. And we assume or come to the conclusion that the reason can only be fear. Fear of what? Fear of looking in the mirror. They're in denial. They don't want to know they're broke. They don't want to know how much they owe because it'll scare them.
Oh, yeah. The people I see with stacks of unopened mail, they bring it in, they open it in the office with me because it's not fun when you know it's bad news. You don't want to know how bad it is. And I think, Fred, I took away from the callers, too, you really hear a sense of pride in the people you've worked with for years. They had their plan, they've stuck to it, they've seen the results. So, that's something that, it can really kind of rally your spirit around if you're achieving something rather than just, continuing one day after the other.
Many years ago, I had a client, and I made a house call. Made several, actually, but one house call I made, I set her up so that she had a monthly income coming in. Every month she got a check. About a year later, I went out to see her. I'm talking to her. She gets up. She goes to the dresser. She opens a drawer, and it's full of unopened mail. Afraid to open it. It was checks. Every envelope had a check in it.
Wow.
Swear to God.
So you're so scared of the bad news, you didn't open the good news.
I couldn't believe it. But that's easy to understand. And that, fear is the acronym, false evidence appearing real. So what's the opposite? It's knowledge. The more you know, the less you're afraid. The less you know, the more you're afraid. Okay, so what stops you dead in your tracks? Fear. That's the obstacle. I once took a course it was a Xerox course called Problem Solving. And Xerox defined a problem as this. It says there's an objective, and then you're here, and between you and the objective there's a barrier. The barrier is the problem. And all you most of the time see is symptoms. You never really get the real problem. So the symptoms of the problem are overspending. The symptoms of the problem are great big debt load, calls from creditors. I could go on and on and on. They're symptoms. The real problem is what? It's fear. Maybe lack of a burning desire, but mostly fear, which is false evidence appearing real. So I sit here on this show talking to my listeners, and I say, you need to get some knowledge so you won't be afraid. The best way not to be afraid is to get a written financial plan. I had a client one time, quite a few years ago, but he said, I really like you. And he said, what can I do to improve my financial situation? Well, I had a briefcase full of data forms, blank data forms that you fill in, and one page on the data form was the budget. I said, here, take one of these and fill one out every month for the next 12 months, and I'll come and see you. He said, that was a revelation. I couldn't believe how I was spending my money. How much money do we spend going out for lunch at the office instead of brown bagging? Okay? Going to Starbucks.
And I'm
smoking.
I'm smiling here, Fred, because everybody that goes into bankruptcy, the number one thing they have to do, 80% of the work in bankruptcy, is they have to keep a budget each month. They have to show us what the income is and tell us where they spent it.
Sure.
And almost to a person, they find that of huge value. They say just the exercise of budgeting, whether the budget was accurate, we stay within it or not.
Doesn't matter if it's right on.
But just the exercise of budgeting was sometimes the biggest value they've gotten out of this whole process, and it really sets them on the right path to not have to do it again.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, we had an ice box. You know what an ice box is?
I know the concept.
That's before fridges.
Yeah, I haven't seen one.
Okay. Well, we had an ice box, and we had an ice man. He used to come with tongs with a block of ice. Put it in there. That's how we kept the food cold. Well, they come out with electric fridges, and my parents weren't wealthy. And this is how they kept the fridge going. There was a slot, you put a quarter in every day. That's how they paid for it. And it was easy. I had a job with a financial institution before the one that I have right now. We used to have calendars. And to change the date, you had to put 50 cents in. Okay? So I'd say to somebody, I said, you should start a plan for putting away $16 a month. And I can't afford it. I said, well, see this little calendar bank? You put 50 cents in this every day, it'll change the date. I'll come back in a month. Back in a month, $16 in there. See, they do it because they can do it systematically, day after day after day after day. It's a lot easier to save 50 cents a day than it is to save $16 a month or $180 a year. A lot easier. The concept is simple. You got to motivate yourself. Okay? Because nothing is easy. Nothing that's worthwhile is ever easy. It's always difficult. If it was easy, everybody would be highly successful, highly wealthy, and that wouldn't work in this world, I don't think. So what you do to be more successful, ladies and gentlemen and listeners, what you do is avail yourself, get yourself a written financial plan. If you have an investment portfolio, you want me to analyze it, take a close look at it to tell you whether it's a good one or not. I don't know if we can see this up on the screen. I'll put it up. These are some case studies that I put together. Here is case study 1. And it's too detailed to get into too much detail, but I want to say here's a portfolio here, model portfolio, top 10 Canadian stocks. Took it right off. I Googled it. I said, give me a list of the top 10 Canadian stocks. There they are. And there's a comparison of them. Benchmark, portfolio itself, and so on. So again, my model portfolio 11 wins 3 times. The stocks win twice. And these are the 10 best ones. Okay? So I have a series of these here that I want to put up. And then I said, okay, how about U.S. stocks? There's U.S. stocks versus a model portfolio. This side's the U.S. stocks. This is the model portfolio here. Again, the U.S. stocks win 4 times. Mine only wins once in this case. Okay? And again, it's just information. We're not saying that somebody should buy U.S. stocks or Canadian stocks, but it's just knowledge. That's what we're talking about. And again, I go back and I look at this as an actual client. There's a case study. So this is what the client had when the client came in to see me. I took the names off, only to protect the innocent. And this is my model portfolio by comparison. Look at how many times I win here. So it's possible to measure investment results. So everybody needs a financial plan. This is an investment plan. It's not a financial plan. But everybody needs both and much more. Inside the financial plan, they need an educational plan for their education. They need a debt management plan to manage their debts. Should they declare bankruptcy? Should they get into a proposal settlement situation and so on? They need to be able to manage their credit rating, all that.
And Fred, to your point, you got to check in on it, right? If you've got your plan, you need to manage it, make sure you're checking it against performance, and that's so important with a budget too. If you've just got a budget and every month it looks the same, but you never actually go back to actual and see where did I deviate, where was I under, so on and so forth, you're missing 80% of the value. So unless you're checking in against, benchmark, looking at your performance and really making some changes, that's where the secret sauce of budgeting is. Yeah. Anybody can write a budget, but it's in the hard stuff of did we meet it, did we not,
and you need a benchmark. You need a benchmark.
Yeah.
So, and I love the term. So where do you get the benchmark? Stats Canada. Mm-hmm. You go to Stats Canada, you can get what every Canadian in Vancouver spends on food and shelter and travel and entertainment and so on. It's all there. So that can be your benchmark. And you can say, well, how do I compare to the benchmark? Mm-hmm. I did a show here one time, had people guess what the average Canadian spends on housing,
right,
groceries, and so on. Amazing the answers I got. They're all over the place. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you, 90% of the time when I ask somebody how much money they spend on groceries, they'll tell me, $500 a month. How many people in your family? 5? I know it's not 500 a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the most common answer I get too, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you that according to Stats Canada, the average adult, it's about $350 a month for groceries. So if you got 4 people, multiply it by 4.
Yeah.
Then you got a better number. Most people tell me they spend $100 a month on clothing. I don't believe that either. Okay. Vacation, they don't know. So I asked them, I said, when's the last time you took a vacation? Where'd you go? Went on a cruise. Well, the average cruise is going to cost you probably $4,000, maybe 10 depending, but somewhere around there. What's it cost to drive the average brand new Chevrolet? Let's say you buy a brand new Chev. What's it cost? You know?
I'm gonna guess you're around all in $700 a month. Gas, insurance.
It's about 8. It's about 8.
About 8, yeah.
According to Stats Canada, it's about 8. That's close. Okay. So I know what these numbers are. So when a client gives me a number, if it's within the range, I accept that. But if not, then I question. Because you got to get it right. Because it's your benchmark. It's where you stand right now. It's how you manage your cash flow. And I think the reason people get into debt and governments get into debt, they don't manage cash flow.
Yeah, I think, Fred, one of the biggest things that I see too is people don't realize that they're actually going further and further to debt each month. And it's, the whole thing where if you find yourself in a hole, what's the first thing you do? You stop digging, right? So I sit down with folks. I'm like, well, let's put all the debt payments aside. Let's just show me your budget. Show me all the things you have to spend, forgetting about all this debt. If it was, I waved a magic wand and it was gone, could you live? And a certain segment of folks that I deal with, they couldn't, and they didn't realize that until we did this analysis. They're borrowing more every month just for their consumption, just for the lifestyle, just for the budget that they've set up, not knowing that it's a recipe for disaster.
Well, the interest expense will kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, what's the worst situation you've ever seen? You must have seen some dandies.
Oh, I've seen a lot of tough situation, I'd say, and it's interesting, Fred, in that where the situation is so bad, it's often the best situation for me because I know I can flip it from what's the worst point in this person's life to them getting back to zero and owing nobody anything. I'll tell you a couple that stay with me, and this was right around RRSPs, and this is an individual, sat down with them, they were just, this lovely elderly couple, they were looking towards retirement, and I'd ask them, okay, see that you got a bunch of debt now, they owed about $40,000 or $50,000. I said, well, what have you tried in the last year to pay off this debt? And they said, well, it used to be $100,000, but they said, but we cashed in all our RRSPs. And I said, well, okay, I don't mean to ruin your day, but you didn't have to do that, and just to see their faces fall, because it was their bank that had told them to do that. Their bank had counseled them and said, you know what, you got all these RRSPs, you owe us a bunch of money, you should cash in the RRSPs, and they did that assuming that everyone wanted their best for them. What they didn't realize is that they were going to have a big tax bill. So cashed in the RRSPs, had to take all the money into income, and then they suddenly owed CRA. So they were in my office, and I didn't see any other option than for them to go forward. And this was actually with the bankruptcy, because they didn't have a whole lot of money to pay back even a third of the debt. So looking at where they were now, which is going to go through a bankruptcy and they don't have their RRSPs, compared to where they could have been, which is if they had gotten the right advice, they could have dealt with the debt, kept the RRSPs, and been better off. That's one that sticks with me. I've definitely seen a lot of the very sad situations of people with, investment losses or mortgage fraud or the list goes on and on, poor broken homes and so on and so forth. But again, for the most part, I see them at a very positive stage, which is it's as bad as it's ever going to be, and now let's make it better. Now let's get you back to owing nobody anything and moving forward. People don't realize this, that if a company goes into bankruptcy, it's over. The company never emerges from bankruptcy. It comes out, maybe a different company or whatever. Individuals are the only people that can start again. You go into bankruptcy, you can get out, you can start again. It's not a life sentence.
I understand. I read something somewhere a while back that you go bankrupt once, you can get your credit back. You go bankrupt twice, it's a little tough. 3 times, you can't ever get it back. Is that correct?
If it's not correct, it should be. I see a lot of people, unfortunately, with a second bankruptcy. I've seen a few with a third bankruptcy. I think my partners, we've been around 25 years. They've probably seen a fourth, but I haven't yet. And really at that point, yeah, the individual, they clearly can't handle credit and shouldn't be advanced any, but creditors, what are you doing? You can see there's been previous bankruptcies. Maybe you shouldn't be advancing.
Sum it up. What's bankruptcy?
Bankruptcy allows you to get back to owing nobody anything. It's a legal remedy available to anybody in Canada, and it takes generally between 1 and 2 years.
And it costs about two grand.
Roughly $2,000 if you're low income.
Okay. Now, what's the settlement option?
Consumer proposal. It's the #1 way of dealing with your debts without going bankrupt. It's you freeze all the interest, reduce the debt to what you can afford to pay. Usually it's about a third, and you get up to 5 years to pay it off. It's the only way to deal with government debt, student loans, credit card debt. It's a great option. You pay no upfront fees. You just pay the trustee to administer the proposal each month, and the trustee handles everything.
And I take that you would recommend the proposal as opposed to bankruptcy.
In any situation, if we're going to explore a proposal first, bankruptcy is always the last resort. Proposal doesn't work for everybody. If you got low income and too much debt, even paying off a third, it's not going to be possible. But many months we file more proposals than bankruptcies, which was completely unheard of even 6 years ago. It's relatively new, it's growing, and it's a great option.
You're a pretty big firm.
We're the biggest in BC and proud to be so.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got 15 offices. We've just opened in the interior of BC in Kamloops, Kelowna. We've opened on the island, Victoria, and Nanaimo, and the remainder of our offices are all in the Lower Mainland.
So, in summary, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, you need a written financial plan. Don't let, what's the book again? Don't let life bite you in the wallet.
Well said.
Okay. So anybody who's called the show, call Frida. We'll make sure you get that book. And you want to see myself, call Frida, make an appointment. You can reach Frida right now. Area code 604-737-3512. And your phone number?
604-684-3030.
We have to go. See you same time, same station next week. Bye for now.
If you'd like Fred to review your portfolio, call his office right now at 604-737-3512. That's 604-737-3512.